Breaking news now. The head of Wagner Group and the president of Belarus are still jockeying for position. With his public questioning of President Putin's version of events, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has emerged stronger in the wake of the military uprising and march on Moscow. According to reports, Wagner Group boss Yevgeny Prigozhin's mutiny has been put to rest thanks to a deal negotiated by Lukashenko. The armed uprising began when some members of Russia's military wanted Putin replaced. When Prigozhin and Putin were about to engage in a high-stakes showdown, Lukashenko stepped in as an intermediary and offered to host Prigozhin and any Wagner Group soldiers who were unwilling to join the Russian military. Despite the announcements made on June 24, it appears that the negotiations have not yet concluded and there is still much jockeying for position. Putin's ability to handle the military and political challenges posed by Prigozhin's rebellion have come into question after a series of embarrassing revelations were made possible by the Belarusian leader following the mutiny. Recent developments. On June 27, Lukashenko said that Prigozhin had arrived in Belarus to begin his exile, but later changed his story. The Belarusian president announced Prigozhin's return to Russia and possible journey to Moscow at a press conference held on July 6 at the Palace of Independence in Minsk. To further emphasize that no members of the Wagner Group were present at the camp, the Belarusian Defense Ministry gave tours of the facility to foreign journalists 2 days later. The Kremlin eventually backed up Lukashenko's story. Prigozhin had visited Russia, met with Putin, and crucial details of the agreement that put an end to the mutiny were still being worked out. Constant progress is being made. Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov confirmed on July 10 that Putin met with Prigozhin and more than 30 of his Wagner Group commanders for an extended period on June 29. On July 14, Putin announced that he had extended an offer to one of the Wagner Group's senior commanders to keep the Wagner Group fighting together in Ukraine. This was a major about-face, as Putin had called those involved in the mutiny led by Prigozhin betrayers on the day it occurred. Prigozhin reportedly turned down the offer on the guy's behalf. Read more about how the failed coup by the Wagner Group has made Belarusian dictator Lukashenko feel safer for the time being and embarrassed Russia. Prigozhin's continued influence in politics is suggested by both the fact and content of this meeting with Putin. Putin may not be able to count on the continued loyalty of his army in light of recent revelations that a Russian general is concerned about the conduct of the war and reports of suspensions and firings among senior officers suspected of sympathizing with Prigozhin. Pressure on Putin. Pressure has been applied to senior Russian officials, including Putin, as a result of Lukashenko's public revelations of contradictions in the Kremlin's narrative. However, it is unclear why Lukashenko is providing such damaging information to Western journalists. Lukashenko is likely engaging in some sort of strategic maneuvering. He plans to take advantage of Prigozhin's defiance to gain more wiggle room in his dealings with Putin and Russia. While Lukashenko's authoritarianism is undeniable, he ultimately relies on Moscow to maintain his hold on power. And Putin has been quick to capitalize on any instability surrounding Lukashenko to increase Russia's sway in Belarus. Lukashenko agreed to strengthen the alliance with Russia after Moscow backed him during protests after he declared himself the winner of the August 2020 presidential elections. Since its inception in 1999, this union has existed mostly on paper, but it has recently been bolstered by a new military doctrine, closer links between the two countries' defense industries, and an increase in joint military exercises. So, Russia can use Belarusian resources in the Ukraine conflict. Not only has Belarus served as a launchpad for attacks on Ukraine, but it has also supplied troops, weapons, and medical supplies. Acceptance of the stationing of Russian tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus has recently increased. This newfound cooperation strengthens ties between Russia and Belarus and enables Moscow to put nuclear threats into action. Lukashenko has maintained a delicate balancing act throughout the war, showing solidarity with Russia while refraining from sending in his own troops. Sending Belarusian soldiers across the border into Ukraine would risk provoking another round of mass protests and once again put Lukashenko's position in doubt, as society in Belarus is strongly opposed to more direct involvement in the war. Despite Moscow's recent success in imposing its will on Minsk, the nature of their relationship would be very different if Russia were the country experiencing political unrest. It will be harder for Russia's leader to keep Lukashenko in line if he or she is preoccupied with fending off rivals and deflecting criticism from within the country. Lukashenko has made use of openings to strengthen ties with nations outside of Russia's sphere of influence, including those in the West. As recently as the fall of 2022, the foreign minister of Belarus reportedly held informal talks with Western diplomats at the United Nations, with the stated goal of improving relations. Information was withheld. Interventions by Lukashenko during the Prigozhin mutiny incident demonstrate that he does not always follow Moscow's lead. We should be on the lookout for Lukashenko to make more tactical moves to exploit Putin's political weaknesses and lay the groundwork for a more independent stance by Minsk now that Wagner Group soldiers have begun arriving in Belarus. This article was originally published on The Conversation and is being republished here with permission. Check out the source material.